Right, here is the Harvey the Duck Treasury Edition, officially known as Marvel Treasury Edition number 12. Unofficially known by me as that Treasury Edition with the Defenders. Back cover, I'll show that here. It is the reverse of the cover, but actually the cover was reworked by Junior Senior, so it doesn't quite match. It works enough though. We have this phony newspaper thing. I'm not sure if this is actually part of the Treasury edition or if it was something else that was put inside my copy. We have one all-new story by Steve Gerber and John Buscema, brother of Sal Buscema, followed by some reprints. We are going to be focusing on the new content. We have a team of villains. And one of the great things about the Treasury editions is getting to see the art by Buscema at this size. If you have only read comics in collected editions or downloads, you are missing something. But at the same time, they are annoying to store. They don't fit in any long boxes. You usually have to get something like this to bag them. And if you are an amateur YouTuber, they don't quite fit into the frame of a camera quite the same way as a regular comic does. They are not the easiest thing to film. We have a team of villains. They are later called the Band of the Bland. They're not called that in this though. And the idea is that they are each parodies of then recent Marvel characters that Steve Gerber did not think much of. We get introduced to these four here. They are set up quite well for characters that you would think weren't meant to be that serious. First we have Sitting Bullseye. He is obviously based on Thunderpath from Excellent Men, with a name that is a brilliant assessment of his role in that title. Then we have Tilly the Own, who I assume is Red Sonja. Next is the Spanker, obvious Punisher parody. And we end with Black Hole, who is Black Star. They are ludicrous characters, but they are set up semi-seriously. The police want to stop them from loitering and trespassing. And I say semi-seriously because Sitting Bullseye is shooting toy arrows, and the Spanker is bending people over and using a paddle to administer spankering. Black Hole stands out as having an actual power, but the Black Hole sucks. Ho, stick it to Black Star, why don't you? Then we meet their leader, Dr. Angst. Dr. Angst is based on Magic Mo, a character from Marvel Chillers issue 1. You might know him from some Avengers stories. The Band of the Bland, they are going to assassinate presidential candidate Harvey the Duck. That is another thing. It isn't worth talking about, really. There was a gag that Harvey the Duck was a valid writing candidate for the 1976 presidential election. Supposedly, there were thousands of actual votes for Harvey the Duck, but I think it is exaggerated. This is incorporated into the story. Harvey the Duck is trying to run for president. He is joined in this endeavour by Beverly, a woman who we are not meant to think about too much, because the idea is she is actually fucking a duck. Cameo appearance from Peter Parker and Mary James. I would vote for Harvey the Duck if one of his pledges was to restore the marriage. But I don't see Harvey the Duck as a character who supports monogamy. The Fowl and the Floozy call on Beverly's friends, but they get the wrong address and instead arrive at Doctor Strange's house, where they meet Batman from the Defenders. Beverly mistakes him for Falcon Man, and I liked reading Steve Gerber's take on this character again. So here is our Defenders, the Big Four, or who should be the Big Four. This is great. The Buscema piece at this bigger size, it's great. I want to show it properly, but I've kind of got to angle it to even fit it all in frame. That is the best I can get, sorry. Maybe if I show the top off, and then the rest of it, you can imagine the full thing. Can't even fit a spread into frame. Our bad guys again. They do have another appearance. They are in some bad Steve Gerber issues of She-Hulks. That is where they get the name, the Band of the Bland. Dr. Angst, I think, also crops up in some Jim Tomato's stories. Vague Age of Spider-Man ones. There's actually a surprising turn on this page where Harvey the Duck feels human. He feels like a character. He asks if Doctor Strange could use his mystic abilities to send him back to his own world. Harvey the Duck comes from another reality. It adds a little bit of sympathetic emotion to what is generally perceived as a tongue-in-cheek, anarchic character. The villains attack and the heroes start to experience some weird magic, like Batman being ambushed by a fence, or Doctor Strange's house being transformed into a big box of cereal. I have praised Steve Gerber plenty, but at his best he was doing stuff like this, and commentary, within the confines of traditional superhero comics. That is the true genius of the man. Something like Defenders is filled with fun ideas like a cereal box transformation, and it feels so fresh and inventive when it is up against Spider-Man fighting a wrestler in a bear suit. And I fucking love Spider-Man fighting a wrestler in a bear suit. Where it starts to fall apart is when he operates outside the normal. Harvey the Duck isn't a typical star of a Marvel comic. And so when stuff like this happens in Harvey the Duck, it is less absurd because Harvey the Duck is already absurd. It feels like a brand of wackiness for Harvey the Duck, rather than something different and exciting for a standard Marvel title. Personally, for me, I am far more invested in the Defenders, their appearance and their part in this story, than I am the title Duck. There is some semblance of a regular Steve Gerber Defenders issue. The Defenders and the villains have been transported to Shea Stadium where they can fight more freely. I am very pleased to see Steve Gerber isn't as predictable as to have Velcro fight the Red Sonja one. The main fight, or the main thing, is Harvey the Duck imbued with Doctor Strange's mystic energies, doing spell combat with Dr. Angst. This is what I talked about. We're too wacky here. There's nothing to ground things. Story is over with the villains defeated. It's not that great a story, but it had a couple of fun ideas. This is early cover art for Harvey the Duck issue 8 by John Coleman. Then we have reprints. This is Swamp Thing issue 1, I believe. I will show some of it. It is a nice chance to see this art at different proportions. I do think this is very truncated to only feature the bits that are relevant to Harvey the Duck. I think it is Swamp Thing issue 1 anyway. We do have Swamp Thing supporting characters like Jennifer Ale. This was meant to be the death of Harvey the Duck. He falls off into the vastness of interdimensional space. This here was a backup feature in one of the gigantic sized Swamp Things. This was showing what happened to Harvey the Duck after he drifted off into space. The myth is that Stanley Lee and Roger Thompson thought Harvey the Duck was too silly and demanded that he be killed off. But then Marvel got a lot of hate mail for killing off the duck, so they reversed the decision. And that is what this story was doing, bringing him back after his early demise in Swamp Thing issue 1. And then we have El Cow. It's the splash pages. The splash pages always look phenomenal at this size. This is one of the more well-known Harvey the Duck stories to me, down to Andy books. The character introduced and featured in this had many Andy book entries in the 2000s. It is John Coleman art, so there is never a good shot anywhere for me to focus on said character. It is El Cow. It is a Dracula cow. And here, this is Harvey the Duck issue 1. The art looks great. I am trying to show it all, but it's kind of pointless because I'm not able to fit it all onto camera. And I have also never read Harvey the Duck issue 1. Didn't even read it in this. I have never read any Harvey the Duck comics. Well, actually, that's just changed. I read the main story in this, the new story. I read that, although maybe it doesn't count because I didn't read the reprints. Well, actually, the Swamp Thing ones, I've read them before, I think. Just this I haven't read, Harvey the Duck issue 1. Guest starring Spider-Man. And there's our interior back cover. Interior back cover, is that a thing? Have I just made that up? I suspect I might have gone into this with the wrong desire. I wanted more Steve Gerber defenders. And there is some of that, but they are definitely background characters to let Steve Gerber do some more Harvey the Duck silliness. I did like the bits that were like a Defenders comic. Heroes fighting the absurd. I'll give it 7 thumbs up for those parts.